1 Kings 1. Adonijah seeks the throne, but David declares Solomon as king. As King David grew old, his strength waned, and he struggled to stay warm despite being covered with blankets. His servants suggested finding a young virgin to care for him and keep him warm. After searching throughout Israel, they found Abishag, a Shunammite woman, and brought her to the king. She was exceptionally beautiful and attended to him, though David had no intimate relations with her. Meanwhile, Adonijah, the son of Haggith, declared himself the rightful heir to the throne. He gathered chariots, horsemen, and 50 men to run before him. Since his father, King David, had never disciplined him, Adonijah felt entitled to rule. Handsome and second only to Absalom in appearance, he sought support from Joab, the commander of the army, and Abiathar, the priest. They sided with him, but Zadok the priest, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, Nathan the prophet, Shimei, and David's personal guards did not. Adonijah hosted a grand feast at the stone of Zoheleth near En-Rogel, sacrificing sheep, cattle, and fattened calves. He invited his brothers, the king's other sons, and the royal officials of Judah. However, he deliberately excluded Nathan, the prophet, Benaiah, David's bodyguards, and Solomon. Nathan, realizing the danger, approached Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. He warned her, "Do you know that Adonijah has proclaimed himself king and David is unaware? If you want to save yourself and Solomon, go to the king and remind him of his promise that Solomon would be his successor." Following Nathan's advice, Bathsheba went to David's chamber, where the frail king lay with Abishag attending to him. She bowed before him and said, "My lord, you swore by the Lord your God that my son Solomon would reign after you. But now Adonijah has declared himself king without your knowledge. He has held a great feast, inviting the king's sons, the army's commander, and Abiathar the priest, but Solomon was not invited. The whole nation awaits your decision. If you do nothing, my son and I will be in grave danger once you are gone." As she spoke, Nathan arrived and reaffirmed Bathsheba's words, asking David whether he had secretly appointed Adonijah as his heir. Alarmed, David immediately called Bathsheba back and swore, "As the Lord lives, who has rescued me from all my troubles, I will keep my promise. Solomon will reign as my successor, and I will make it happen today." David summoned Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. He ordered them to place Solomon on his royal mule and lead him to Gihon, where Zadok and Nathan would anoint him as king. Then they were to blow the trumpet and proclaim, "Long live King Solomon." Afterward, they would escort him to sit on David's throne, officially establishing him as ruler over Israel and Judah. Benaiah responded, "So be it, may the Lord confirm this and make Solomon's reign even greater than yours." Following David's orders, Zadok, Nathan, and Benaiah, along with the royal guards, placed Solomon on David's mule and led him to Gihon. There, Zadok anointed him with sacred oil from the tabernacle. The trumpet sounded, and the people cheered, "Long live King Solomon." The city erupted in celebration, and the ground shook with the sound of their rejoicing. Meanwhile, Adonijah and his guests were concluding their feast when they heard the commotion. Joab, hearing the trumpet, asked, "What is happening in the city?" Just then, Jonathan, the son of Abiathar the priest, arrived with news. "King David has made Solomon king. He now sits on the throne with the full support of Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah. The people are celebrating, and even David has blessed the Lord, praising him for allowing him to witness his successor's coronation." Panic spread among Adonijah's guests, and they quickly dispersed. Terrified for his life, Adonijah fled to the tabernacle and clung to the horns of the altar, pleading for Solomon to spare him. When Solomon heard of Adonijah's fear, he declared, "If he proves himself loyal, not a single hair on his head will be harmed, but if he acts wickedly, he will die." Solomon then summoned Adonijah, who came and bowed before him. Solomon dismissed him, saying, "Go home." Thus, Solomon was firmly established as king of Israel, just as David had decreed. 1 Kings 2. David dies and Solomon becomes king. As David neared the end of his life, he gave his son Solomon these final instructions. I am about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and act like a man. Follow the Lord's commands and walk in his ways. Obey his laws, decrees, and instructions as written in the law of Moses. If you do, you will prosper in everything you do and wherever you go. The Lord will fulfill his promise to me. If your descendants remain faithful and devoted to me, there will always be one of them on the throne of Israel. David then warned Solomon about Joab, son of Zeruiah. Do not forget what Joab did to the commanders of Israel's army, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He murdered them in cold blood during peacetime as if it were war, and their blood stains him to this day. Deal with him as you see fit, but do not let him die peacefully. However, David also instructed Solomon to show kindness to the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite. Treat them well and let them dine at your table, for they helped me when I fled from Absalom. Regarding Shimei son of Gera, David said, Shimei from Bahurim cursed me bitterly when I fled to Mahanaim. When I returned, I swore by the Lord that I would not kill him, but you must not let his actions go unpunished. You are wise. You will know what to do to ensure he pays for his sins before he dies. After giving these instructions, David passed away and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned for 40 years, 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. Solomon then ascended the throne, and his rule was firmly established. Adonijah's request and his death. Adonijah, son of Haggith, approached Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. She asked, Do you come in peace? He replied, Yes. He then said, You know that the kingdom was mine, and all of Israel expected me to be king. But things turned out differently, and my brother received the throne because the Lord willed it. I have only one request. Please do not deny me. Bathsheba agreed to listen. Adonijah then asked, Please ask King Solomon to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. Bathsheba agreed and went to Solomon on Adonijah's behalf. When she arrived, Solomon stood up, bowed to her, and ordered a throne to be placed at his right side. She made the request, but Solomon was furious. Why do you ask for Abishag for Adonijah? You might as well ask for the kingdom itself. He's my elder brother, and has the support of Abiathar the priest and Joab, son of Zeruiah. Solomon swore by the Lord, May God deal with me severely if Adonijah does not pay for this request with his life. As surely as the Lord lives, Adonijah will die today. Solomon ordered Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, to execute Adonijah, and he was put to death. Abiathar's exile and Joab's execution. Solomon then confronted Abiathar the priest. Go back to your land in Anathoth. You deserve to die, but I will spare you because you carried the ark of the Lord in my father's time and shared in his hardships. Solomon removed Abiathar from the priesthood, fulfilling the prophecy against the house of Eli at Shiloh. When Joab heard of Adonijah's death, he fled to the tent of the Lord and clung to the horns of the altar. Solomon was informed, and he sent Benaiah to kill him. Benaiah arrived and told Joab, Come out, by order of the king. Joab refused, saying, I will die here. Benaiah reported this to Solomon, who said, Then do as he wishes. Kill him there and bury him. This will remove the guilt of his innocent victims from my family. Joab was executed and buried in his own land. Solomon then appointed Benaiah as commander of the army and Zadok as high priest in Abiathar's place. Shimei's fate. Solomon summoned Shimei and said, Build a house in Jerusalem and stay there. If you leave the city and cross the Kidron Valley, you will be signing your own death warrant. Shimei agreed and lived in Jerusalem. However, after 3 years, 2 of his slaves ran away to Gath. Shimei went after them, retrieved them, and returned to Jerusalem. Solomon was informed and summoned him. Did I not warn you not to leave Jerusalem under penalty of death? You agreed. Now you must face the consequences of your past evil against my father. Solomon ordered Benaiah to carry out the sentence, and Shimei was executed. With the removal of Adonijah, Abiathar, Joab, and Shimei, Solomon's rule was firmly established under God's protection. 1 Kings 3, Solomon asks God for wisdom. Solomon married the daughter of the king of Egypt and brought her to the city of David. She remained there until the construction of the royal palace, the temple of the Lord, and the walls of Jerusalem were completed. In the meantime, the people worshipped at various local shrines because no temple had yet been built for the Lord. Solomon deeply loved the Lord and followed the instructions of his father David. However, he still offered sacrifices and burned incense at the local shrines. The most important of these was Gibeon, where he went to offer sacrifices. Again, however, he still offered sacrifices and burnt incense at the local shrines. The most important of these was Gibeon, where he went to offer sacrifices and burnt incense at the local shrines. That night at Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, saying, "Ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you." Solomon replied, "You have shown great kindness to my father David, for he was faithful, righteous, and just before you. Now you continue this kindness by making me king in his place. But I am young and inexperienced, and I do not know how to lead. Here I am among the people you have chosen, a vast and great nation. Therefore my request is this: give me a wise and understanding heart to govern your people, to distinguish between right and wrong. For who can rule such a great nation without your help?" God was pleased with Solomon's request and said, "Because you have not asked for long life, wealth, or the death of your enemies, but instead wisdom to govern well, I will grant your request. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, greater than anyone before or after you. Additionally, I will bless you with riches and fame, things you did not ask for. No king on earth will compare to you. And if you follow my ways and obey my commandments as your father David did, I will also give you a long life." Solomon awoke and realized it had been a divine dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the Ark of the Covenant, and worshiped the Lord by offering burnt offerings and peace offerings. He then held a great banquet for his servants. Solomon's wise judgment. One day, 2 women, both prostitutes, came before King Solomon seeking justice. The first woman spoke, "My lord, this woman and I live in the same house. I gave birth to a baby while she was there. 3 days later, she also gave birth. One night, her baby died because she accidentally lay on him in her sleep. While I was sleeping, she switched our babies. She took my living son and placed her dead child next to me. When I woke up to nurse my baby, I saw that he was dead. But in the daylight, I realized this was not my child." The second woman interrupted, "No, the living baby is mine, and the dead one is yours." The first woman protested, "That is not true. The dead child is yours, and the living one is mine." The 2 women argued in front of the king. Solomon listened and then said, "Both of you claim the living child as your own. One says, 'The dead one is yours,' and the other says, 'No, the living one is mine.'" After pausing for a moment, Solomon ordered, "Bring me a sword." A sword was brought before him. Then he commanded, "Cut the living baby in 2, give half to one woman and half to the other." At this, the real mother, deeply moved by love for her child, cried out, "No, my lord, please give her the baby. Do not kill him." But the other woman said, "If I cannot have him, neither will she. Cut the baby in 2. Solomon then gave his verdict. "Do not kill the baby. Give him to the first woman. She is the real mother." News of the king's wisdom spread throughout all of Israel. The people were amazed at his ability to judge fairly and recognized that his wisdom came directly from the eternal God. 1 Kings 4, the golden age of Solomon's reign. Solomon's rule over Israel was like nothing the world had ever seen. His kingdom flourished, his people thrived, and his wisdom became legendary. From the borders of Egypt to the mighty Euphrates River, nations paid tribute to him, recognizing his strength, wisdom, and divine favor. A kingdom well ordered. At the heart of Solomon's success was a well-structured government. He surrounded himself with trusted advisors and officials who ensured that the kingdom ran smoothly. Azariah, son of Zadok, the high priest overseeing religious affairs. Elihoreth and Ahijah, sons of Shisha, royal scribes recording history and laws. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, the kingdom's historian preserving Solomon's legacy. Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, the fearless commander of the army. Zadok and Abiathar, devoted priests maintaining Israel's spiritual integrity. Zabud, son of Nathan, a priest and Solomon's close personal advisor. Adoniram, son of Abda, the overseer of labor, ensuring the construction of great projects. To sustain the royal court, Solomon appointed 12 regional governors, each responsible for providing food and resources for 1 month of the year. These men ruled their districts with diligence, ensuring that no need was left unmet. A time of peace and prosperity. Under Solomon's reign, Israel knew peace like never before. There were no wars, no enemy invasions, only prosperity. The people of Judah and Israel were as numerous as the grains of sand on the seashore, and they ate, drank, and rejoiced. Solomon's dominion stretched from the Euphrates River in the east to the land of the Philistines in the west, reaching the borders of Egypt. These nations submitted to him willingly, paying tribute and recognizing his rule. His palace overflowed with abundance every day his household required. 30 barrels of the finest flour, 60 barrels of regular flour, 10 fattened bulls, 20 pasture-fed oxen, 100 sheep, deer, gazelles, roebucks, and an endless supply of poultry. The entire land lived in safety from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. Every family had what they needed. Every man sat under his own vine and fig tree, enjoying the blessings of the Lord. Solomon's wealth extended beyond food and gold. He possessed 40,000 stalls for his chariot horses and commanded an elite force of 12,000 horsemen. His armies stood ready, though no enemy dared challenge him. A wisdom beyond measure. But Solomon's greatest treasure was not his wealth, his palaces, or even his vast kingdom. It was his wisdom. God had given him a mind sharper than any scholar, deeper than any philosopher. No question was too difficult for him, no mystery too great. His wisdom outshined the sages of the East and surpassed the knowledge of Egypt's greatest minds. He was wiser than anyone, even Ethan the Ezrahite, and the renowned thinkers Heman, Kalkal, and Darda. His reputation spread across the world, and kings from distant lands sent emissaries just to hear him speak. Solomon was not only a ruler, but a poet and philosopher. He wrote 3,000 proverbs, each filled with deep insight. His songs numbered 1,005, capturing the beauty of creation and the mysteries of the human heart. His knowledge was vast. He understood the great cedar trees of Lebanon and the tiny hyssop that grows between stones. He studied animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, seeing the patterns of God's creation in all things. From every corner of the earth, people journeyed to listen to him. Wise men, rulers, and scholars seeking to learn from the man whom God had blessed beyond measure. Thus, Solomon's reign became a golden age, an era of peace, wisdom, and divine favor. But even as his fame spread, his greatest challenge was yet to come. Would he remain faithful to the God who had given him everything? 1 Kings 5, the covenant to build the temple. News of King Solomon's reign spread far and wide, reaching the ears of Hiram, king of Tyre, a longtime ally of Solomon's father, King David. Hiram wasted no time in sending ambassadors to Israel, signaling his support for the young king. Solomon, eager to fulfill a sacred mission, responded with a message of great significance. You know that my father David longed to build a temple for the Lord, but war surrounded him. He fought battles on every side until God gave him victory. Now the Lord has granted Israel peace. There are no enemies at our gates, no wars to fight. The time has come to build the house of the Lord as he promised my father. Your son who will reign after you will build a house for my name. For this I need your help. Authorize the cutting of cedars in the forests of Lebanon. My woodcutters will work alongside yours, and I will pay your men whatever wages you require. No craftsman in Israel matched the skill of the Sidonians in cutting timber. A king's blessing and a deal sealed. When Hiram read Solomon's words, he was overjoyed. Blessed be the Lord who has given David such a wise son to rule this great nation. Without hesitation, he sent his reply. Your request is granted. My men will cut the cedar and pine you need and float them down the sea to a port of your choosing. There your workers can collect them. All I ask in return is that you provide food for my people. And so an agreement was struck, a royal alliance sealed with wisdom and generosity. From that day forward, Hiram supplied Solomon with all the timber he required, while Solomon provided Tyre with 20,000 barrels of wheat and 20,000 barrels of pure olive oil each year. This exchange continued without fail, fostering peace and prosperity between their kingdoms. The great workforce. With the agreement in place, Solomon mobilized a vast workforce. 30,000 men from across Israel working in shifts, 10,000 laboring in Lebanon each month, followed by 2 months of rest. 70,000 common laborers to carry materials. 80,000 stone cutters in the mountains preparing massive stone blocks for the temple's foundation. 3,300 overseers, ensuring the work progressed smoothly. At Solomon's command, workers quarried massive stones, while builders from Israel, Tyre, and Gebal worked side by side, preparing timber and stone for the greatest construction project in Israel's history. The temple of the Lord, a house of glory, strength, and devotion, was about to rise. 1 Kings 6, the temple rises. 480 years after the Israelites left Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign, the time had finally come. In the 2nd month, Ziv, Solomon began what his father David could only dream of, the construction of the temple of the Lord, a magnificent structure. The temple stood 27 cubits long, 30 cubits wide, and 13.5 cubits high, a majestic house of worship. At the front stretched a grand portico spanning the entire width of the temple, extending 50 cubits outward. High upon the outer walls, narrow latticed windows allowed light to pour into the sacred space. Around the temple, a multi-story structure was built, filled with rooms for storage and sacred duties. The lowest story measured 7 feet wide, the middle 7 feet wide, and the topmost story 10 feet wide, supported by carefully crafted ledges along the walls. A temple of silence. Every stone used in construction was cut and shaped at the quarry so that no hammer, chisel, or iron tool was heard on the holy construction site, only the sounds of workers moving in solemn reverence. The entrance to the lower level was on the south side, leading upward by a staircase to the 2nd floor and further up to the 3rd. The temple ceiling was made of cedar beams stretching across the structure, while side rooms were joined to the temple's frame with thick cedar planks. A divine promise. As the construction advanced, the word of the Lord came to Solomon. If you follow my commands, obey my laws, and remain faithful, I will fulfill the promise I made to your father David. I will dwell among the people of Israel. I will never abandon them. The holy place. Solomon spared no effort in making the temple a place of unparalleled beauty and holiness. The walls from floor to ceiling were paneled with cedar, while the floors were laid with the finest pine. At the back of the temple, he set apart a most holy place, 30 feet in length, width, and height. This inner sanctuary, destined to house the Ark of the Covenant, was entirely overlaid with pure gold, from the walls to the ceiling to the floor. Even the cedar altar was coated in gleaming gold. In front of the inner sanctuary, chains of gold hung from the ceiling surrounding the sacred space. Gold was everywhere, a symbol of divine majesty and glory. The cherubim of gold. At the heart of the inner sanctuary, Solomon placed 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 15 feet high. Their outstretched wings spanned the entire room, touching wall to wall, while their inner wings met in the center. These cherubim, symbols of the heavenly host, were overlaid in pure gold, as were the walls, which were carved with intricate depictions of cherubim, palm trees, and flowers, a garden of divine artistry. Even the floor, inside and outside the sanctuary, was covered in gold. Doors of splendor. Solomon crafted magnificent doors of olive wood for the entrance to the inner sanctuary. Each doorpost had 5 sides, and the doors themselves were carved with cherubim, palm trees, and flowers, then overlaid in gold. For the main sanctuary, the entrance had olive wood doorposts with 4 sides leading to pine wood doors, each with 2 folding leaves. These doors, too, bore intricate carvings of cherubim, palm trees, and flowers, covered in hammered gold. Completion of the temple. The inner courtyard surrounding the temple was built with 3 layers of hewn stone and a final layer of cedar planks. Solomon laid the foundation of the temple in the 4th year of his reign, in the month of Ziv. 7 years later, in the 8th month of the 11th year, the construction was completed in every detail, exactly according to plan. For 7 years, laborers, artisans, and craftsmen toiled to create a dwelling place for the Lord, a symbol of God's eternal presence among his people. The Temple of Solomon, a beacon of faith, beauty, and devotion, stood in glory for all to see. 1 Kings 7. Solomon completes the temple and builds his palace. After 13 years, Solomon completed the construction of his palace, a grand complex built with exquisite craftsmanship and lavish materials. The Palace of the Forest of Lebanon. Solomon's Palace of the Forest of Lebanon was 150 feet long, 22.5 feet wide, and 13.5 feet high. It was supported by 4 rows of cedar pillars holding up 45 cedar beams, arranged in sets of 15 per row. Above them, a magnificent cedar roof stretched across the structure. On either side, windows were set in groups of 3, allowing light to pour into the vast halls. The rectangular doors were arranged symmetrically, creating a harmonious and balanced design. The royal courtyards and the Hall of Justice. Solomon built a courtyard with pillars measuring 22.5 feet long and 13.5 feet wide. In front of it stood another covered courtyard, its roof extending beyond the pillars, offering shade and grandeur. He also constructed the Hall of Justice, where he presided over legal cases. The hall was completely paneled with cedar, reflecting the wisdom and authority of Israel's king. Behind the Hall of Justice, Solomon built his own royal palace, mirroring its design. Additionally, he constructed a special palace for Pharaoh's daughter, his wife, ensuring she had a home befitting her royal status. Unparalleled craftsmanship. Solomon spared no expense. Every stone, from foundation to rooftop, was of the finest quality. These stones were hewn, polished, and precisely cut. The foundation stones were massive, measuring between 10 and 15 feet thick. Above them, finely cut stone blocks were placed, interwoven with cedar beams, providing both strength and beauty. Surrounding the great courtyard was a wall made of 3 layers of stone and 1 layer of cedar planks, following the same pattern as the inner courtyard of the Lord's temple. Hiram, the master craftsman. To bring his vision to life, Solomon sent for Hiram of Tyre, a master craftsman in bronze. Hiram's mother was from the tribe of Naphtali, while his father was a skilled bronze worker from Tyre. With extraordinary skill, Hiram crafted all the bronze work for the temple. The 2 bronze pillars. Hiram began by casting 2 massive bronze pillars, each standing 26 feet high and 16 feet in circumference. Atop each pillar, he crafted bronze capitals, 7 feet high, shaped like lilies. These capitals were adorned with 7 interwoven chains and decorated with 2 rows of 200 bronze pomegranates. The pillars were erected at the portico of the temple. The one on the south side was named Jachin, meaning security, and the one on the north side was called Boaz, meaning stability. The Molten Sea. Next, Hiram cast a giant bronze tank known as the Molten Sea. It measured 12 feet in diameter, 7 feet high, and 40 feet in circumference. Beneath its rim, 2 rows of fruit-shaped ornaments were placed every 2 inches, cast in one continuous piece. The Molten Sea rested on the backs of 12 bronze bowls, arranged in groups of 3, facing north, south, east, and west. This enormous tank was 4 fingers thick, and its rim was shaped like a lily's edge. It held 4,000 liters of water. 10 bronze stands with basins. Hiram also crafted 10 bronze stands, each measuring 6 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 4 feet high. The stands featured engraved panels depicting lions, oxen, and cherubim, with metal garlands surrounding them. Each stand was mounted on 4 bronze wheels, with axles cast from solid bronze. The wheels, resembling chariot wheels, were 2.5 feet in diameter. Every stand had a square base with an 18-deep circular opening at the top, designed to hold bronze basins. Each bronze basin could hold 200 gallons of water. 5 stands were placed on the south side of the temple and 5 on the north side, while the Molten Sea was positioned at the southeast corner of the temple. Other temple utensils. Hiram's work also included buckets, shovels, and basins, 2 sets of chains to decorate the capitals, 400 bronze pomegranates arranged in 2 rows of chains, 10 bronze stands, each with its own basin, 12 bronze bowls supporting the Molten Sea. These items were all cast in clay molds in the Jordan Plain between Sukkoth and Zarethan. The sheer quantity of bronze used was beyond measure. No one could estimate its weight. Golden furnishings for the temple. Beyond the bronze work, Solomon also commissioned golden furnishings for the temple, including the golden altar, the golden table for the bread of the presence, 10 golden lampstands, 5 on the right and 5 on the left, before the inner sanctuary, golden flowers, lamps, and tongs, golden bowls, wick trimmers, sprinkling basins, censers, and hinges for the temple doors. Completion of the temple. With all the gold, bronze, and precious materials in place, Solomon completed the construction of the Lord's temple. He then brought in all the sacred treasures dedicated by his father, David, including silver, gold, and holy utensils, and stored them in the temple's treasury, dedicating them to the service of the Lord. 1 Kings 8. Solomon dedicates the temple to God. After completing the construction of the temple, King Solomon summoned all the leaders of Israel, the heads of the tribes and patriarchal clans, to bring the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord from Zion, the city of David. In the 7th month, during the Great Autumn Festival, all of Israel gathered before King Solomon. The priests carried the Ark of the Covenant along with the tent of meeting and all its consecrated utensils. King Solomon and the entire community of Israel stood before the ark, worshiping and offering sacrifices of sheep and oxen, so many that they could not be counted. The priests placed the ark in the inner sanctuary, the most holy place, beneath the wings of the cherubim. The wings of the cherubim spread over the ark, covering it and its poles. The poles were so long that their ends could be seen from the entrance of the inner sanctuary. Inside the ark were only the 2 stone tablets that Moses had placed there at Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after bringing them out of Egypt. When the priests left the most holy place, a cloud filled the temple. The glory of the Lord was so overwhelming that the priests could not perform their duties. Then Solomon prayed. The Lord said he would dwell in a dark cloud, but I have built a magnificent temple for you, a place for your eternal presence. Turning to the gathered assembly, Solomon blessed the people, saying, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who fulfilled the promise he made to my father David. Since bringing Israel out of Egypt, he chose no city for his name to dwell, but he chose David to rule over Israel. My father David desired to build a temple for the Lord, but God declared that it would be his son who would fulfill this task. Today the Lord has fulfilled that promise. I have succeeded my father David, and I have built this temple to honor the Lord and provide a place for the Ark of the Covenant." Standing before the altar, Solomon lifted his hands to heaven and prayed, "Lord, God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth below. You keep your covenant of love with those who wholeheartedly follow you. You fulfilled your promise to my father David. Now, O God of Israel, continue to uphold your promise that a descendant of David will always sit on Israel's throne, provided they walk faithfully before you. But will God indeed dwell on earth? The heavens cannot contain you, how much less this temple? Yet hear my prayer and supplication. May your eyes always be on this temple, the place you declared where your name would dwell. Hear the prayers offered here, and from your heavenly dwelling, forgive our sins. When anyone wrongs another and comes before this temple to take an oath, hear from heaven and judge justly. When Israel is defeated by enemies because of sin, and they turn back to you in repentance, hear from heaven and restore them. When the heavens are shut and there is no rain due to sin, and the people pray and turn from their sin, hear from heaven and send rain on the land you gave them. If famine, plague, or disaster strikes, and your people stretch their hands toward this temple in prayer, hear from heaven and forgive. You alone know the hearts of all people. Reward each person accordingly. May the foreigner who comes to this temple because of your great name also find their prayers heard, so that all the peoples of the earth may know you and fear you, as Israel does. When your people go to battle, may their prayers toward this city and temple be heard, and may you uphold their cause. Even if they sin and are taken captive to a foreign land, if they repent and pray toward this temple, hear their prayers, forgive them, and show them compassion." After concluding his prayer, Solomon stood and blessed the assembly again. "Blessed be the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word of his good promises has failed. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our ancestors. May he never leave us or forsake us. May we remain faithful to him and walk in his ways." Solomon and all of Israel offered sacrifices to dedicate the temple. They presented 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep in worship. The bronze altar was too small to hold all the offerings, so Solomon consecrated the courtyard before the temple for sacrifices. The celebration lasted 14 days, 7 days for the dedication and 7 days for the festival. At the conclusion, Solomon sent the people home. They departed joyful and grateful for all the goodness the Lord had shown to his servant David and to his people, Israel. 1 Kings 9. God speaks to Solomon about obeying his commandments. After Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all that he desired, the Lord appeared to him again, just as he had previously appeared at Gibeon. The Lord said, "I have heard your prayer and your earnest supplications. I have consecrated this temple you have built, placing my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be upon it. As for you, if you walk before me faithfully with integrity of heart as your father David did, and follow my commands and statutes, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever. Just as I promised your father David, you will never lack a successor on the throne of Israel. However, if you or your descendants turn away from me, fail to keep my commandments, and serve other gods, I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them. I will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. Israel will become an object of ridicule and scorn among all peoples. This temple will become a heap of ruins. Everyone who passes by will be appalled and will ask, "Why has the Lord done this to this land and this temple?" People will answer, "Because they abandoned the Lord their God, who brought their ancestors out of Egypt. They embraced other gods, worshiping and serving them. That is why the Lord brought all this disaster upon them." After 20 years of construction on the Lord's temple and Solomon's royal palace, Solomon gave King Hiram of Tyre 20 towns in the region of Galilee. This was in exchange for the cedar, juniper wood, and gold that Hiram had provided. However, when Hiram visited these towns, he was displeased and said, "What kind of towns are these, my brother?" To this day, they are known as the land of Kabul. Despite his dissatisfaction, Hiram had sent Solomon 120 talents of gold, about 4.5 tons. This is the account of the labor force King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his palace, the terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and the fortified cities of Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had attacked and captured Gezer, burned it down, and killed the Canaanite inhabitants. He later gave the city as a wedding gift to his daughter, Solomon's wife, and Solomon rebuilt it. Solomon also rebuilt Lower Beth Horon, Baalath, and Tadmor in the wilderness. Additionally, he constructed cities for his chariots and horses and whatever else he desired in Jerusalem, Lebanon, and across his kingdom. Solomon conscripted the descendants of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, peoples who remained in the land, into forced labor. They remain in that condition to this day. However, Solomon did not enslave the Israelites. Instead, they served as soldiers, officials, commanders, captains, and overseers of his projects. There were 550 officials supervising the work and managing the laborers. When Pharaoh's daughter moved from the city of David to the palace Solomon had built for her, he also constructed the terraces. 3 times a year, Solomon offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar he had built for the Lord, burning incense before him and fulfilling all the temple's obligations. King Solomon also built a fleet of ships at Ezion-Geber near Elath on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. Hiram sent experienced sailors to help Solomon's men. They sailed to Ophir and brought back 420 talents of gold, about 16 tons, to King Solomon. 1 Kings 10, the Queen of Sheba visit Solomon. When the Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, which was linked to the name of the Lord, she traveled to Jerusalem to test him with difficult questions. She arrived in grand style, accompanied by a large entourage and camels laden with spices, gold, and precious stones. During her audience with Solomon, she asked him everything that was on her heart. Solomon answered all her questions with ease, showing no hesitation or confusion. After witnessing Solomon's wisdom firsthand and observing his palace, the food on his table, the organization of his officials, the fine clothing of his servants, and the offerings in the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. She said to the king, "Everything I heard in my country about your achievements and wisdom is true. I would not have believed it if I had not seen it myself. Your wisdom and wealth far exceed the reports. Blessed are your servants who stand before you daily and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delights in you and has made you king to uphold justice and righteousness." The Queen of Sheba presented Solomon with over 4 tons of gold and abundance of spices and precious stones. Never before had so many spices been brought to Israel. Additionally, King Solomon's fleet, in partnership with Hiram's ships, brought gold from Ophir, along with large quantities of sandalwood and precious stones. From the sandalwood, Solomon crafted handrails for the temple and palace, as well as harps and lyres for musicians, an unparalleled shipment in its rarity. In return, Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba everything she desired, including gifts exceeding her expectations. Satisfied, she returned to her homeland with her entourage. Each year, Solomon received 25 tons of gold, excluding the revenue from merchants, traders, and the governors of neighboring regions. He commissioned 200 large shields of hammered gold, each weighing approximately 7.5 pounds, and 300 smaller shields weighing about 3.75 pounds. These were stored in the palace of the Forest of Lebanon. Solomon also constructed a magnificent throne of ivory overlaid with pure gold. It had 6 steps, with lions standing beside each armrest, and at the ends of each step, there was no other throne like it in any kingdom. All of his drinking vessels and palace utensils were made of pure gold, as silver was considered too common during his reign. His fleet, in collaboration with Hiram's ships, brought cargo every 3 years, including gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Solomon's wisdom and wealth surpassed that of all the kings on earth. People from every nation sought his counsel, bringing annual tributes of gold, silver, fine clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. Solomon accumulated 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, stationed in chariot cities and Jerusalem. He made silver as plentiful as stones and cedar as common as sycamore trees. His agents imported horses from Egypt and Cilicia, with chariots costing 15 pounds of silver and horses about 4 pounds. These were then exported to the kings of the Hittites and Arameans. 1 Kings 11. Solomon turns away from God and faces problems. King Solomon was captivated by many foreign women, including Moabites, Ammonites, Sidonians, and Hittites, despite the Lord's clear warning to the Israelites not to marry women from these nations to avoid being led into idolatry. Solomon loved them deeply and refused to turn away. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and they indeed led him astray. As he grew older, his wives influenced him to worship foreign gods, and his devotion to the Lord weakened. Unlike his father David, Solomon did not remain faithful to the Lord. He worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Solomon even built high places for Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Molech on a hill east of Jerusalem, allowing his foreign wives to burn incense and offer sacrifices to their gods. This angered the Lord, who had twice appeared to Solomon and explicitly commanded him not to follow other gods, but Solomon disobeyed. The Lord said to Solomon, "Since you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. However, for the sake of your father David, I will not do this during your lifetime. I will take it from your son. Yet I will leave him 1 tribe for the sake of David and Jerusalem, the city I have chosen." The Lord raised up adversaries against Solomon. One was Hadad the Edomite, a member of the royal family of Edom. After David's army, led by Joab, had killed every male in Edom, Hadad escaped to Egypt as a young boy with some of his father's servants. Pharaoh welcomed him, providing a home, food, and even marrying him to the queen's sister. When Hadad learned of David and Joab's deaths, he requested to return to Edom, becoming a persistent enemy of Israel. Another adversary was Rezon, son of Eliah, who had fled from King Hadadezer of Zobah. After David's victory over Zobah, Rezon gathered followers and eventually became king of Damascus, ruling over Aram and causing trouble for Israel throughout Solomon's reign. Jeroboam, an official in Solomon's administration, also rebelled. An Ephraimite from Zeradah, his mother was a widow named Zeruah. Solomon had noticed Jeroboam's exceptional skills and put him in charge of the labor force for the tribes of Joseph. One day, the prophet Ahijah of Shiloh met Jeroboam on the road. Ahijah tore his new cloak into 12 pieces and gave Jeroboam 10, declaring, "This is what the Lord says, I am about to tear the kingdom from Solomon and give you 10 tribes. Solomon will retain 1 tribe for the sake of my servant David, and for Jerusalem, the city I have chosen." The Lord explained that this division was because Solomon had abandoned him to worship foreign gods. However, God promised Jeroboam that if he followed his commands faithfully as David did, he would establish an enduring dynasty for him. Nevertheless, out of loyalty to David, one tribe would remain under Solomon's son's rule. When Solomon learned of Jeroboam's rebellion, he sought to kill him. Jeroboam fled to Egypt and found refuge with King Shishak, staying there until Solomon's death. Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel for 40 years. And when he died, he was buried in the